I think we're in a very, very interesting moment in the history of the US advertising industry. And it's probably worth saying I'll direct my comments predominantly towards TV and video, but obviously we'll think about the broader picture. So if you think about the very big picture, it seems to me that we've gone from obviously a relatively closed, concentrated marketplace to a far broader and more diverse ecosystem. And we're still in the middle of that transition. It's more advanced in some sectors and industries than in others. In TV and video, I think we're right in the middle of it at the moment, which is what makes it such a fascinating time. The positive thing about that transition is that it seems to me to dramatically lower barriers to entry and opened up the market to a far greater array of creators, advertisers, content producers, and so on and so forth. Your typical consumer in a US household now has access to hundreds of thousands of hours of programming from literally all around the world, provided by a far more diverse array of video and service providers than at any time in the past. And that includes not just companies that we regard as traditional professional content creators, but also creators. Platforms like TikTok and YouTube and others, for better or worse, have dramatically facilitated a huge expansion in the range of content available by making it easy for individuals to produce semi-professional content. We expect that to continue, and if anything, to gather pace as AI creation tools allow increasingly sophisticated video to be made. The good news is that that's empowered a whole new generation of storytellers. It has also inevitably put pressure on existing business models. I think when you go to a marketplace defined by high barriers to entry and a relatively small number of networks and service providers to one in which those numbers have exploded out of all recognition, inevitably the incumbents will lose share. At the same time, you've obviously got competition from a much more diverse variety of businesses. We're at that point in the market where major airlines are rolling out targeted video ad networks. We've seen a phenomenal growth in expenditure on retail media. We've seen AI begin to disrupt even big established businesses like search. So all of this means that the business models that have historically underpinned content creation in the US, I think are changing and changing quite markedly. And inevitably, as with every transition, that means we will gain some things and lose some others. I think on the positive side, the diversity and breadth of content and the rate of change and innovation in this market is unprecedented. I think on the negative side, many of the things that historically US consumers have really prized and valued are finding their business models more challenging. Obviously, there's been a lot of reaction in the press to the cancellation of the Stephen Colbert show, which was reportedly losing around 40 million US dollars per year. That is a huge change in the market when you see a business like that, a very high profile business, at least with a certain sector of the population, find its fundamental underlying economics challenged. I think we have a long way to go before this transition plays itself out. I think I expect to see a much more diverse marketplace result at the end, one with a far greater diversity of voices, and that's a good thing. We still have some questions, I think, to address as an industry, particularly the way in which content distributed on big platforms is compensated. There's obviously a lot of talk about that at the moment, and how we avoid a marketplace that's profoundly concentrated. Our friend Brian Weezer at Mountain and Wall, for example, presented some very interesting information at a recent CIMM summit looking at concentration in the global ad market. And he's obviously anticipating a market in which global advertising revenues are going to become far more concentrated on a relatively small number of walled garden platforms. I don't think anybody wants to see that in the US marketplace. We want to see a diverse, competitive marketplace that allows a plethora of different businesses with very different models to thrive and survive and to create high quality video content. But we are in the middle of a transition, and I think that's going to create some challenges along the way, as well as plenty of opportunity for players that are able to transform and give themselves up to address them, often in a very different way to what they've historically done, it seems to me. It's a really interesting question. I think the principal thing I would really like to see is a marketplace that supports a diversity of expression and facilitates a variety of voices. Um, I think there's a risk at the moment in the market that a whole tier of professional content creators and companies get squeezed out, and your choices as a business are either to be very large or very small. I'd like to see a space in the middle for companies that can create niche content or shows that can appeal, perhaps not to the mass market, but can appeal to a diversity of audiences and be sustainable and reward creators while respecting copyright and privacy and other issues and so on and so forth. I still think that's in question at the moment. I think everybody has talked a lot about consolidation in the US market for some time. I'd like there to be a limit to that consolidation so that we can preserve a diversity of businesses and enterprises telling stories, servicing audiences and advertisers in a diversity of different ways. Well, at CIMM, a lot of our work at the moment is geared towards ensuring that we have professional measurement solutions, syndicated measurement solutions that service a diverse variety of needs. If you're a very large business that has very high quality consumer data and can offer a kind of closed loop attribution capability with a very high volume of interactions for advertisers, you can perform relatively well. But obviously, that's only one business model. I'd like to see a market in which companies can deliver via direct to consumer or B2B2C models and can actually thrive and survive. Many of those companies, many of whom are CIMM members, are entirely dependent on syndicated measurement solutions. And if those solutions can't accurately provide them with the insights they need to ensure that they're servicing audiences effectively, then I think as an industry, we have a problem. One great example, which CIMM has been looking at recently, relates to children's media. Now, unsurprisingly, children's media consumption has changed out of all recognition in the last 20 years. Children now consume TV and video and other types of content like gaming, for example, across a far greater diversity of platforms. They're on YouTube, they're on Netflix, they're on Amazon, they're on Roblox, they're on gaming platforms, they're watching traditional TV and video services still. But joining up those services and presenting advertisers and content creators with a clear view of who's doing what, which audiences are being well served and which aren't, has become very challenging. We don't yet have measurement solutions that address that multi-platform, multimedia reality of children's consumption, media consumption today. I think you could argue that children are the canary in the coal mine, that the wider audience is going to replicate that pattern. We're going to see a much more diverse, fragmented marketplace with a far greater diversity of experiences available to consumers, and that will create measurement challenges. But if you want to create high quality professional content that's age appropriate, perhaps delivers some pro-social or pro-educational agenda, it's very hard to do that in this marketplace at present. I'd like to see us have measurement solutions that maintain and respect privacy, but also allow content creators the insights they really need to service audiences and to run their businesses. If not, then I think we will always have problems in this market servicing everybody with content that meets their needs.